Hey, today we're painting a really cool environment and I'll also break down all the main steps, so stay tuned till the end to check out the final image. Let's get started. Usually I start with a very simple Linework sketch, nothing too fancy. I mostly worry about composition at this stage. Trying to arrange all my main elements, figure out some interesting proportions maybe, and this is pretty much the first step. It's sort of more of a planning phase where you want to make sure that you have an appealing, interesting composition and everything is nice and readable for the viewer. Right after, if you're okay with your sketch, you can block in all your shapes with just flat color. Here I'm trying to get a feel for those values and a bit of color as well, since I work with color right from the start. You don't have to commit too much right now, that's for sure, but definitely make sure your values work well, everything is readable, and you have a clear idea in your mind, and also that your composition is still working, right? The relation between values is still working, you see a nice comparison between dark and light. A lot of help in this situation would be to work with reference images. Alright, so the third step is establishing the light scenario. Working on defining those edges, what kind of forms you're having, and so on. And in this case, the main light should be somewhere on the right behind the camera, a really strong, warm, direct sunlight. And now according to this information, I can define those edges, softer ones, sharper ones. And at first I mainly worry about the focal point, so the castle and the area around it. I sort of established what are my lightest lights, and now through comparison I can create contrast throughout the whole image and make sure that my focal point is readable and then there's nothing else fighting with it. And by the way, for those of you that want to learn even more, I'm uploading full process videos with extra commentary on my Patreon page, together with original PSD files, extra brushes, and even more tutorials. So make sure to check it out. I'm spending a little bit of time working on that water surface. We will definitely indicate some reflection happening, but I don't want it to be super perfect because the surface of the water is definitely not flat all over the place. And in this case, I want to break that reflection down with some lines, kind of create some interesting pattern as well. So we've worked now quite a bit on the middle ground, and it's time to manage a bit of that foreground as well. So when it comes to the values there, you really don't want to create a lot of value variation in the darks, so better try to group them. This will definitely make your composition better, because just like the normal human eye works, whenever you're looking at something, you don't right away understand what kind of values are there in the dark, you have to readjust. So the same thing is going to happen here. If we have our focal point, like that really bright spot in the middle ground, we don't want to create a lot of contrast in the foreground, especially in the shadowed area. And I figured that the light will probably affect the foreground as well, so we'll have two planes, one catching some light and also one area a bit darker. I'm gonna work a little bit on the character, and I'm definitely in this case aiming to have a painterly look for my image, and I'm trying to achieve that by having some looser brush strokes here and there. But anyways, you really have to be, even in this case, you have to be precise, especially when you're trying to describe how the light works, some shadows, some bounce light, some transitions. Eventually you don't want your work to look wobbly and sort of imprecise, so you can achieve that by being accurate in some areas, but also try to achieve that nice painterly brush work too. And I think I'm not gonna load it too much with details, I just really want to have a readable form, maybe adjust the pose a little bit, but not more than that, especially because it's in the foreground And we already established that our focal point is the castle, so I don't want to have a lot of crazy contrast happening in the foreground so that it will fight with the middle ground and the castle area. I'm just roaming around the image, trying to work on separate areas. I don't want to be stuck in one place for too long because I want to maintain a consistent look, so that's really important. And right now we're back on the castle. I'm polishing some of those areas and describing the form a little bit better. So there's still a lot of foliage left unattended, a lot of planes that look weird. It's very simplified right now, so we'll try to describe the form a little bit better by using some of those soft edges to show where is the light hitting from and how the form is turning away from the light. And I'm gonna spend a little bit of time trying to describe the grass, the textures. Basically, in order to go over all the steps again, we started with a very simple Linework sketch, right? It's like a composition sketch, planning phase. You want to indicate your main areas, your focal point. You want to have some interesting proportions maybe happening and so on. And the next step, the second step, was to block in those elements with flat color, with value and color in this case. And once that is all well, you can move on to describe your lighting scenario. I'm adding a little bit of light here on the nearest part of the background, and I'm spending some time on the clouds as well. Again, I'm not gonna push the contrast over there. I just want to make a nice flat looking sort of background, and it will be a really cool contrast with our bright castle in the middle. So definitely you can see that it's working so far, and you can notice that sometimes I'm zooming out really hard, and that's because I want to look at the image from afar and make sure that everything is readable, that the values work, that the contrast is there where it's supposed to be, and that there is nothing weird happening in other places that's gonna attract attention. And now I'm gonna spend some time to define some textural information, right? This would be sort of like the fourth phase, where I'm thinking mostly about textual information, additional details, storytelling points maybe a bit, and making more accurate decisions about the form. And also notice that I'm gonna group the values. For example, here on the castle, in the side that is catching all the light, I don't want to create too much variation of value, right? Because it will start to lose its realism. I want to sort of flatten it a little bit, but also add some color variation, some value variation, edges and all that stuff. And it's really gonna, create a stronger statement, so to speak. Basically, the more grouped your values are, the more controlled they are, the better your composition is gonna end up being. And that's gonna be my focus for the rest of the image, basically. Alright, so this is the final image. Thank you guys so much for watching till the end. I hope you enjoyed the video and maybe found it helpful. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing, it will help a lot. Also, thanks a lot to those of you that subscribe to my Patreon page. I'm gonna post a lot of content over there as well. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one, coming soon.